have everyone. Welcome to this session. Today's speaker, as you all know, is Dr. Saif Mahmood, who will be speaking to us about translation, about tarjuma, about translating from Urdu to English. So we'll hand over to him for a minute. I will do a brief introduction, although I'm sure all of you who are here are eager to hear him and already know who he is. But yes, so I'll go on to doing a brief introduction. Dr. Saif Mahmood, author, translator, critic, Supreme Court advocate. He manages to live many different lives, but today, like we said, he'll talk to us about his special relationship with translation and also transcreation. We can talk about the differences. He's also the founder of the South Asian Alliance for Literature, Art and Culture, and he has one particular acclaim for his passionate recitations of Urdu poetry, especially of progressive and contemporary poets like Faiz, Majaz, Sahir and John Elia. In fact, interestingly, our session last week in Translation Thursdays was with poet Mamta Sagar, who had read out her Kannada translation of Faiz's Hum Dekhenge, which was fascinating. So I'm really glad that today we'll be going a bit deeper into, whether it's Faiz or other Urdu poets. So I'm really excited about that. This is his book, as some of you might know already, Beloved Delhi, a Mughal city and her greatest poets. And I wanted to start with something that comes in quite at the beginning of the book. This is a quote by Urdu poet Zehra Nigah, Zehra Nigah. And she says, "Our beloved poet, the dear departed Firaq Sahib, had once written something very important in one of his essays, that if a writer is to pick his pen to write the history of Hindustan, he will have to take recourse to our classical literature, especially the Urdu ghazal." So, and she goes on to praising Saif's, sort of chronicling of the Urdu poets of Delhi. So I'm going to hand over to Saif now. Again, Saif, thank you for being here and spending your evening with us today. We're really excited to hear what you have to tell us about translation, your experiences. And after that, we'll open it up to everyone for discussion. I can see there are some, diverse people from the worlds of literature, translation, theater. So really excited again to have you here. Welcome. And Saif, I'm handing over to you now. Please do unmute yourself. I'm going to mute myself and completely over to you now. Looking forward.
Thank you very much for this very generous introduction, and thank you all for joining. I can assure you that this introduction that Mohini made had more to do with her generosity and not so much with the merit of my work. तुम वो है ना कि तुमको दुआएं दूं मुझे कातिल बना दिया, बात ये है. Thank you for joining. Yesterday, I was telling a friend of mine that, I have this session on translation and I haven't prepared anything about it. So she said, "Oh, you are an old hand at it." तो मैंने कहा, अच्छा, let's say this in Hindi or Urdu now. Old hand, क्या कहेंगी आप? तुम एक पुराने हाथ हो. I mean, it will be bizarre if you just translate it like that into Urdu. तुम एक पुराने हाथ हो. हाँ, ये आप जरूर कह सकते हैं कि तुम एक पुराने खिलाड़ी हो. But again, if you translate तुम एक पुराने खिलाड़ी हो into English, you could say you are an old player. You're quite a player, which again would mean something very different and not really very complimentary. So these are, really the issues and the nuances that I want to talk to you about today. वो दाग का एक शेर है कि नहीं खेल ए दाग यारों से कह दो, नहीं खेल ए दाग यारों से कह दो कि आती है उर्दू ज़बान आते आते. तो पहली बात तो उर्दू ज़बान ही इतनी मुश्किल से आती है आते आते, it takes ages, and then to translate it into English, that's quite another ball game. I remember what Amjad Islam Amjad told me once. He's one of the greatest contemporary Urdu poets alive, lives in Lahore, wonderful poet. So he told me once that somebody from England translated, a professor of Urdu in one of the English universities, translated one of Amjad Islam Sahab's nazms into English. Amjad Islam translated what that man had done into Urdu again and said कि जो मैंने लिखा था उसका, जो आपने लिखा था उसका तर्जुमा अब मैं आपको भेज रहा हूं, and see how different they are. So what I propose to do today is not really to make a monologue or a speech or something, but थोड़ी सी अड्डेबाजी की जाए. I will first allow me to first put forth 4 or 5 basic points that I want to make, and then, since the proof of the pudding is in the eating, I will come straight to practical examples of what people, of what translators face, and how these issues which I have raised in these 4 or 5 points stare at us, stare at translators while actually translating from Urdu into English more than translating from English into Urdu. I've done both. So let me just start with two preliminary assumptions. And they are true of every language, but I'm talking here in the context of Urdu. And the first assumption that I want to make is that Urdu literature, and especially Urdu poetry, completely defies translation. That is my first assumption. And secondly, notwithstanding my first assumption, translations are not only important, in fact, they are necessary. Imagine if there were no translations, you would have been completely deprived of the great masters. And not only in Urdu, I mean, there would be no love in the time of cholera, there would be no Rumi, there would be no Neruda. So with these two assumptions, firstly, that Urdu poetry defies translation. And secondly, that notwithstanding the first and irrespective of the first, translations are necessary. Let me just give you a broad overview of the challenges that we face as translators. But let me first address another issue, and that was raised by a translator friend yesterday, because the word, the expression used for today's discussion is transcreation. So I was asked by a translator friend yesterday, what is transcreation? And while I was trying to explain to her, how you capture to the best of your capabilities, the message of the original into another language, which is culturally entirely different from the original, she said, but isn't that what you anyway do in good old translation? That's true. It's true that even in the most basic form, of translation involves the translator adding their own skill and their judgment in order to best capture the essence of what has been said in the original work. But when you transcreate, you are actually not just translating, you are also recreating the original text. So in a new language, in a new culture, whilst making sure, or at least trying, that it is still appropriate in the original context in which it was written. So, and I will give you, when I give you practical examples, perhaps I will be able to make myself clearer as we go on. So in transcreation, the transcreator must be given the freedom not only to translate from the original, but also to make changes, significant changes in that process in order to enable to enable an adaptation into an entirely different culture. So actually, I, speaking for myself, have a problem with transcreation in that sense. I am not a transcreator. I would only use transcreation as the last recourse. If something can be translated with a bit of an explanation in a footnote or an explanatory note in the body of the work, etc., why recreate it? And I will give you examples. You see, the bottom line is faithfulness and fidelity to the original, and in this order, firstly, to the meaning of the original, and secondly, as far as possible, to the actual words used in the original. The integrity of the original work is completely non-negotiable, and the transcreation or translation should not militate against the artistic integrity of the original. Therefore, for me at least, if footnotes or explanatory notes can still explain or bring in the essence of what has been said in the original, I would opt for that any day rather than completely transcreating it into a different culture or a new language. और अभी मैं आपको बताऊंगा कुछ examples देके classical Urdu शायरी से. Second thing I want to say is that you can't see language in a vacuum. You have to take note of the fact that a language involves, a set of beliefs, attitudes, customs, behavior, social habits of the people who speak that language. So, like Hindi and Urdu may, share a common, say, morphology or grammar, phonology, sometimes even syntax. But when their languages are so different and so disparate as English and Urdu, it becomes especially difficult because here we are talking of two entirely different cultures which are completely alien to each other. There are things which have no equivalent in the other culture at all, much as you want to try. I remember once I was speaking to Dr. Rakshanda Jalil, and she gave two beautiful examples. She said, अच्छा ये बताइए कि बारिश की बूंदों पे उर्दू में क्या क्या पता नहीं लिखा गया है बारिश में. इतनी रोमांटिक शायरी है बारिश के बारे में उर्दू में, और फिर फिल्मी गीत हैं जिसमें बाकायदा ये दुआ की जा रही है कि बारिश हो, अल्लाह मेघ दे, पानी दे. बट फॉर एन इंग्लिश मैन इट वुड मेक नो सेंस, बिकॉज वहां तो वो ये दुआ कर रहा है कि भाई बारिश बंद हो तो सूरज आए, let there be sun. So this kind of a use of barish would make no sense to an Englishman. Another example she gave me was very interesting. He said, हम लोग सहरे पे, जो दूल्हे का सहरा होता है, उससे पता नहीं क्या क्या लिख देते हैं. बाकायदा उर्दू लिटरेचर में तो there is a tradition of writing a poem called a सहरा. अब सहरा यहाँ लिखा भी जाता है और सहरा लफ्ज भी इस्तेमाल किया जाता है और शायरी में भी. अच्छा, गाने में भी आपको दूल्हे का सहरा सुहाना लगता है. But would it make any sense to an Englishman? Imagine an English wedding, in a Christian wedding, in a church or a cathedral, there's a dula wearing a sehra. It would make no sense to someone, that the bride and the groom is wearing braids of flowers. So these are two entirely different cultures, and translating from Urdu into English is somewhat also very different from, translating from Urdu into, say, Persian or Hindi, or a language which certainly has more affinity to Urdu. English is a completely different language with completely different culture, more often than not with no equivalence, either in the meaning or expression, or even in structure and grammar. They are completely different. And translating poetry is even more difficult than translating prose, because poetry, how do I say this? Poetry actually additionally relies also upon sounds and not just meanings. Let me give you an example. अब फैज की एक बहुत मशहूर नज़म है. It's dedicated to the Iranian students. It's called ईरानी तलबा के लिए. और नज़म क्या है? ये कौन सखी हैं? सखी is a generous person, a benevolent person. ये कौन सखी हैं जिनके लहू की अशरफियां छन 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 छन, धरती के पैहम प्यासे कशकोल में ढलती जाती हैं, कशकोल को भरती जाती हैं, छन 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 छन. जुल्म की अंधी रात में फूटा सुबह की बगावत का गुलशन, और सुबह हुई मन मन तन तन. अब कर लीजिए आप इसका तर्जुमा. छन 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 छन, मन मन तन तन. How will you translate this? So this musicality, these sounds in poetry are also very typical to the Urdu culture or the Persian culture. क्या करेंगे आप इसका? So far as the challenges that I have faced, in actually translating are concerned, I think most challenges that I face are cultural in nature. The most insignificant words sometimes become the biggest stumbling blocks. I was on a session with Jerry Pinto once, and there was a translation of Intizar Hussain Saab's novel into English, and Intizar Saab uses the word nigodi. हमारे यहाँ कहा था, अरे निगोड़ी कहाँ बैठी हो, हटो यहाँ से. So I asked Jerry, I said, can you translate nigodi? He said, no, I can't translate it, but I can act as one and show you. So what do you do with these words? Nigodi, ay nigodi, hato. Yeah, अच्छा, बड़ा छोटा सा example ले लीजिए. Very, very oft used word, दामन. उर्दू में तो मेरे ख्याल से शायरी में अगर आप पूरी एक लिस्ट बना लें उर्दू शेरों की, तो उसमें से कम 30 या 40% शेरों में लफ्ज दामन इस्तेमाल हुआ होगा. दामन पे कोई छींट, ना खंजर पे कोई दाग, तुम कत्ल करो हो कि करामात करो हो. यहाँ पे दामन का मतलब बिल्कुल अलग होगा उस दामन से जो आप कहेंगे मैं दामन फैलाए बैठा हूं. So what will you call it? A hem of a shirt, or a collar, or it could be a pallu also, depending on the context. अब जब आप ये कह रहे हैं कि मैं दामन फैलाए बैठा हूं, तो it obviously can't be the same दामन जिस पे दाग है. दामन पे कोई छींट, ना खंजर पे कोई दाग, वो तो नहीं हो सकता है. So how do you translate this? या एक लफ्ज है वहशत. इश्क, गालिब का शेर आपने सुना होगा. इश्क मुझको नहीं वहशत ही सही, मेरी वहशत तेरी शोहरत ही सही. वहशत क्या होती है? वो जो आजकल लॉकडाउन में हम लोगों को हो रही है. So what does it involve? Vahshat. Now there is no equivalent of vahshat in English. It is an emotional state which has the elements of frenzy and loneliness and fear, madness, also some wilderness. A lot of translators use frenzy. It could also be translated as fear depending on the situation. कैसे आप इस्तेमाल करेंगे? I remember I was translating Faiz. You just mentioned Faiz. I was translating Faiz की जो इंतसाब है into English, dedication. और उसमें एक लाइन में आता है, आंचलों की हिना, काकुलों की महक. अब काकुलों की महक तो चलिए, फ्रेग्रेंस ऑफ हर ड्रेसेस और समथिंग लाइक दैट, ऑफ हर कर्ल्स। आंचलों की हिना का क्या तर्जुमा है? और आंचल की कैसे हिना हो सकती है? होल कल्चरल कॉन्टेक्स्ट टू दिस। एंड देन ऑफ कोर्स देयर आर प्रॉब्लम्स विद व्हाट वी कॉल पोएटिक एक्सप्रेशन। यू नो, जिगर जैसे जो लफ्ज है, वो उर्दू में उसका मतलब तो होता है लिवर। जिगर मीन्स लिवर। हमदर्द की दवा मिल जाएगी आपको, जिगरीना या शरबत जिगर, इट्स ए टॉनिक फॉर द लिवर। बट आप जब उर्दू में इस्तेमाल करते हैं मेरे जिगर का टुकड़ा, आर यू सेइंग अ पीस ऑफ द लिवर? You're really actually referring to the heart, or you know, some such thing, soul or a heart or something like that. अब ये गालिब का की गजल बहुत मशहूर आप लोगों ने सुनी है सबने, कि ये ना थी हमारी किस्मत की विसाल यार होता, अगर और जीते रहते यही इंतजार होता। इसमें एक शेर है, बहुत खूबसूरत शेर है। कोई मेरे दिल से पूछे तेरे तीरे नीम कश को, ये खलिश कहां से होती जो जिगर के पार होता। तो तीर नीमकश, half drawn arrow. Since it was half drawn, it couldn't pierce through the heart, it only pierced through half the heart. So Ghalib is really saying कि अगर वो पूरा मेरे दिल के आर पार निकल जाता, तो वो खलिश, वो जो that sweet pain that I have now, I would have been deprived of it. अच्छा है कि it was half drawn. But just see, what is he saying? Is he saying वो खलिश कहां से होती जो जिगर के पार होता? Zahir hai, he's not referring to the liver. You know, it's one thing to say that it's been my liver has been pierced by an arrow. Quite another to say that my heart has been pierced by an arrow. So ये poetic expressions हैं इस तरह के. And Urdu poetry, you know, is very, very metaphoric. Poetry as it is very allegorical and figurative, but Urdu poetry takes the cake. वैसे takes the cake का भी शायद कोई equivalent नहीं होगा उर्दू में। क्या क्या कहेंगे आप? उसने मेरा बालूशाही, उसने मेरी शाही टुकड़ा खा लिया, ले लिया। Anyway, so it uses a lot of metaphors and illusions, you know, allusions and similes. Let me give you an example. अब काफिर जो लफ्ज है, काफिर, the literal meaning of a kafir is an infidel or a non-believer. But in Urdu poetry, it is used to refer to a heartless beloved. Kafir. वो काफिर क्या जाने? Or to extol the beauty of the beloved, you use the word sanam. और वैसे सनम किसको कहते हैं? आइडल को. No, I actually have a very interesting list. I should actually just read a couple of examples from that. There's a Polish scholar who has drawn a list of such, poetic metaphors used in Urdu. And let me just, it reminds me not wearing my, yeah. So look at this list, you know, the terms that have been metaphorically used in Urdu, ghazal, include paimana, mekhana, मैं, और साकी, then Ibn Maryam, Jesus Christ, the son of Maryam, इस तरह की बहुत सारी, बदमस्ती, खुमार, ये all these things are not being used in their literal interpretation or in their literal meaning. They are used to signify something else. So it would really depend on each context where it is used, on each particular share. The term sanam can be translated in 10 different ways depending on how it is being used. It could be idol, it could be beauty, it could be all ye gorgeous, anything. अच्छा, फिर प्रॉब्लम आती है एक idioms में. आजकल मोदी जी का तूती बहुत बोल रहा है, which means he's becoming really very famous and exercises a lot of power. और आप उसका तूती क्या होता है? It's that flicker bird, you know, it's a small bird like a sparrow, the flicker bird. Will you say कि his flicker bird is speaking? No. So idioms are a problem, and idioms have to do with culture and culture alone. And idioms, mind you, change even within the Urdu language, even within the Urdu culture. The same idiom will not be used by Hyderabadi speaking Urdu, which will be used by, you know, somebody in Awadh. I have a great comment here saying you can say it's Twitter speaking. Anyway, yeah. Then another practical example that we face, the problem that we face, is while translating sarcasm, you know, or while translating satire or humor, because all these involve a very sharp, bitter, cutting style of expression, and it frequently loses meaning when translated. अच्छा, मैं आपको इसका भी एक बड़ा छोटा सा example देता हूँ. Mushtaq Ahmed Yusufi, who died recently 2 years ago, was one of the greatest Urdu satirists in prose. that we have ever seen. तो उनका एक बड़ा मशहूर एक जुमला है कि लाहौर की कुछ गलियां इतनी पतली हैं कि उसमें से बैक वक्त अगर एक मर्द यहां से जा रहा हो और एक औरत वहां से आ रही हो तो बीच में सिर्फ निकाह की गुंजाइश रह जाती है. कैन यू ट्रांसलेट दिस इनटू इंग्लिश विदाउट एक्सप्लेनिंग? यू कांट. इसको अगर आप नॉर्मल अंग्रेजी में तर्जुमा कर दें इसका वर्ड टू वर्ड तो उसका कोई मतलब ही नहीं होगा, पूरा मतलब उसका खत्म हो जाएगा. And this, for instance, may require some kind of transcreation. And last and the very most important thing I want to say is that I have now realized that there are certain words which you should just leave as they are in the original, as they have been used in the original. Don't translate them at all. Like, I know I'm currently translating Majaz with Jerry Pinto. My next book is on Majaz. I'm writing the whole story of Majaz and the Awadh of those days and the Urdu culture in those days. And along with the book will be appended a couple of poems by Majaz, which are being very generously translated by Jerry. So yesterday, we were negotiating between us a translation of a beautiful poem of Majaz called Nanni Pujaran. It's about a little girl, you know, a child who is taken to a temple by her mother in the morning. She's not interested in praying or worship. And Majaz is given a beautiful, is beautifully described how she looks and all. तो एक तो हमने नन्ही पुजारन में जो लफ्ज पुजारन है उसको पुजारन ही छोड़ दिया है. वी हैव नॉट ट्रांसलेटेड इट. सेकेंडली, गिव यू एन एग्जांपल. उसमें एक शेर में आता है, एक बंद में, कान में चांदी की बाली है, कान में चांदी की बाली है, हाथ में पीतल की थाली है. तो हमने बाली और थाली को वैसे ही छोड़ दिया है. इन ईच ईयर अ सिल्वर बाली, इन हर हैंड्स अ ब्रास थाली. इन माय ओपिनियन नथिंग बेटर कुड हैव बीन डन विद दिस. Also, और इस तरह के लफ्ज हैं, टीका, तिलक, साकी, इन सबको you can leave it as they are. Also relations, you know, some relations are very typical to India. मामू जान, क्या लिखेंगे आप? अंकल में वो बात ही नहीं है जो मामू जान में. भाभी, आपा, leave them. Trust your readers. तो वैसे भी कविता का जो सच होता है वो आधा सच होता है. वो पूरा तब बनता है जब पढ़ने वाला भी कुछ थोड़ा बहुत अपना सच उसमें मिला ले. So trust your readers with some of them. So these are the issues that we really face, and now I want to give you some practical examples of some actual shares where these issues have been faced. Let me just pick up my book once again. There's on the Columbia University website, I'm sure most of you know, there's a page called Desert Full of Roses by Francis Pritchett, where जो कमाल उन्होंने किया है उसमें वो ये है कि उसमें गालिब की सारा कलाम, every single share that Ghalib had ever said, published or unpublished, all of them you will find there with a proper index. And in respect of each share, there would be a translation and a commentary starting from, if possible, Ghalib's own commentary about it, or commentary by, yes, here we have it, or commentary by his contemporaries, and coming down to commentaries by Shamsur Rahman Farooqi, and then Francis Pritchett's own commentary. Do look it up. अब उसमें से मैं एक शेर पढ़ रहा था, गालिब का शेर है, थी खबर गर्म के गालिब के उड़ेंगे पुर्जे. थी खबर गर्म के गालिब के उड़ेंगे पुर्जे, देखने हम भी गए थे पर तमाशा ना हुआ. ट्रांसलेशन क्या किया गया है? Of course, she's explained it beautifully after that, but look at the translation. I'm reading it. There was hot news that pieces of Ghalib would fly. We too had gone to see, but the show did not take place. I'm sorry, but this is, at least two, if not three, idiomatic expressions have been used in this share. पहला तो थी खबर गर्म होना, rumors doing the rounds, खबर गर्म थी. फिर पुर्जे उड़ाना, कि गालिब के उड़ेंगे पुर्जे. क्या होता है पुर्जे उड़ाना? To tear someone apart, to tear someone to pieces. अरे मियाँ वहां चले मत जाना, तुम्हारे पुर्जे उड़ा देंगे. ये, but not really in the sense of physically tearing somebody to pieces, but tearing somebody's views to pieces, somebody's beliefs, opinions, even somebody's reputation. और तमाशा होना, to make a spectacle of something. तमाशा बना रखा है उसमें. Now, what Ghalib is really saying is that, rumors were doing the rounds that, oh, this Ghalib fellow who claims to be the ultimate lover, the most passionate, the most faithful and selfless person in town, he would be tested today and his claim will be torn to pieces What a spectacle it would have been. Like other spectators, I too went to see went to see his fate on the appointed day, but nobody appeared on the stage. तो जिन्होंने पुर्जे उड़ाने का दावा किया था वो खुद ही नहीं आए, गायब थे. This is what he's saying. Now look at the nuances, and now see that translation again. There was hot news that pieces of Ghalib would fly. We too had gone to see, but the show did not take place. I mean, I have not translated this, but if I were to, I would say something like there were serious rumors that Ghalib would be torn to pieces. I too went to see his fate, but the promised spectacle didn't happen. And then in asterisks, use an asterisk and explain what I have just said. एक दो चीजें मैं आपको और बता देता हूँ. ज़ौक़, उस्ताद ज़ौक़, जो कि बहादुर शाह ज़फ़र के उस्ताद भी थे, and was the last poet laureate of Mughal India. Mirza Ghalib की उनसे दुश्मनी रहती थी because he was not such a good poet as Ghalib, and Ghalib could not have access to the Qila, to the Red Fort, till such time as ذوق was alive because of this rivalry. Anyway, the ذوق, though, was not a great poet, but he was a master at using idioms of spoken Urdu and figures of speech. So colloquialism is really typical to his poetry, and I will just read one couplet of ذوق to make my point. It is from my book. Yes. अब ज़ौक़ का शेर है कि गुल उस निगाह के ज़ख्म रसीदों में मिल गया. I'll just explain this. गुल उस निगाह के ज़ख्म रसीदों में मिल गया, ये भी लहू लगा के शहीदों में मिल गया. अब इसका लिटरल ट्रांसलेशन तो ये होगा, गुल उस निगाह के ज़ख्म रसीदों में मिल गया. A flower has become part of those who have been wounded by her eyes. It has also joined that list of people who have been wounded by her eyes. ये भी लहू लगा के शहीदों में मिल गया. This too has put blood on itself and has joined the line of martyrs, the list of martyrs. But ये जो लहू लगा के शहीदों में मिलना is a well settled, accepted Urdu idiom. लहू लगा के शहीदों में मिलना, to pretend to be a martyr even though you have done nothing to achieve that martyrdom. So I have translated this. Now the flower's been wounded by her gaze. So here's another one pretending to be a martyr. So I have used pretending to be a martyr here instead of the literal translation. And above that, in the body, I have explained how an idiom has been used in a शेर. अच्छा, एक अंग्रेजी का बहुत मशहूर idiom है, आप सबने सुना है कि if Muhammad doesn't come to the mountain will go to Muhammad. Now ذوق really wants to ask in this next शेर the other way around, opposite of this, whether the mountain will go to Muhammad if Muhammad doesn't come there. Now just see what the शेर is. कहने लगा कि जाता है प्यासा कुएं के पास, या जाता है कुआं कहीं तृष्णा दहन के पास. अब जरूरी नहीं था कि इसको ट्रांसलेट करने के लिए मैं अंग्रेजी का वो इडियम इस्तेमाल ही करूं, हालांकि पूरा फिट होता है इसमें. So I have not really used a transcreation in that sense, and because if I translated it simply as it has been said in the original, it was making complete sense. And the translation that I have done is, does the thirsty man go to the well, he asked, or does the well come to the parched mouth? There's no need to use an equivalent English idiom. This makes complete sense and is very, very faithful to what ذوق had actually said. इस तरह के और बहुत सारी चीजें हैं. मैं एक दो चीजें आपको और छोटी छोटी सुना के फिर इजाजत लूंगा, किसी और बात करेंगे. कि एक गालिब का शेर है, अच्छा हाँ, एक शेर और सुन लीजिए पहले आप. मीर का शेर है कि वो बहुत मशहूर गजल है मीर की, कि उल्टी हो गई सब तदबीरें, कुछ न दवा ने काम किया, देखा इस बीमारी दिल ने आखिर काम तमाम किया. ये बेगम अख्तर ने गाई है बहुत चीज. इसमें एक शेर है जो नहीं गाया है उन्होंने, कि शेख जो है मस्जिद में नंगा, रात को था मैं खाने में. शेख जो है मस्जिद में नंगा, रात को था मैं खाने में, जुब्बा खुरका टोपी कुर्ता मस्ती में इनाम किया. He donated everything he had was wearing to in मस्ती. मस्ती को कैसे आप ट्रांसलेट करेंगे? मस्ती could be fun, but here it has been used to signify a condition of drunkenness, inebriation, etc. So I have used the cloak gown. The sheikh who stands naked in the mosque today was in the tavern last night. His cloak, gown, shirt and cap, drunk out of his wits, he gave them all away. This is what he's really saying. Drunk out of his wits, मस्ती में इनाम किया, मस्त हो गया था मैं बिल्कुल. Not that मस्ती fun वाली. एक मोमिन खां मोमिन की बहुत मशहूर गजल है ना, तो कि वो भी गाई है बेगम ने, तुम्हें याद हो कि ना याद, कभी हम में तुम में करार था, तुम्हें याद हो कि ना याद हो। तो इसमें जो लफ्ज आता है दिस रिफ्रेन, तुम्हें याद हो कि ना याद हो, इसको मैंने बहुत सिंपल तर्जुमा वैसे ही किया जैसे होना चाहिए, यू माइट रिमेंबर और यू माइट नॉट. A friend of mine from Pakistan thought that I should say you might remember or perhaps not. But that would have been wrong. It was not very fair. Momin is not saying you might remember or perhaps not. He has no doubt saying you might remember or you might not. तो जब सीधा सीधा तर्जुमा करने से बात बन रही है तो उस तरह का तर्जुमा जो है वो क्यों किया जाए. अब एक मैं आपको, ये तो हो गई शायरी की बात, मैं आपको एक खत पढ़ के सुना देता हूँ मिर्जा गालिब का और उसका तर्जुमा सुना देता हूँ अंग्रेजी में. Mirza Ghalib was a great, letter writer, and in fact, a lot of people say that had he not been a poet, his literary stature would still have been the same because of how he wrote letters. बिल्कुल ऐसा लगता था जैसे जिससे लिख रहे हो, उसी से बात कर रहे हैं, उसी से गुफ्तगू कर रहे हैं. So post 1857 का एक मंजर खींचा है उन्होंने अपने खत में. जरा खत सुन लीजिए. It's just one paragraph from the खत. I'm not reading the whole of it. ये खत लिख रहे हैं मौलवी अजीजुद्दीन को गालिब. साहब, कैसी साहबजादों वाली बातें करते हो, दिल्ली को वैसा ही आबाद जानते हो जैसे आगे थी. कासिम जान की गली मीर खैराती के फाटक से फतेहुल्लाह बेग के फाटे तक बेचिराग है. हाँ, अगर आबादी है तो ये है कि गुलाम हुसैन खां की हवेली अस्पताल है और जियाउद्दीन खां के कमरे में एक डॉक्टर साहब रहते हैं और काले साहब के मकानों में एक और साहिब आलीशान इंग्लिस्तान तशरीफ रखते हैं. लाल कुएं के मोहल्ले में खाक उड़ती है, आदमी का नाम नहीं. मोहल्ले के मोहल्ले तबाह बर्बाद हो गए. अहले शहर की जमीयत में फर्क आ गया है और वो हालात हैं कि सब कुछ बहा कर ले गया, आया था एक सैलाब सा. आई एम रीडिंग माय ट्रांसलेशन ऑफ दिस. पहले तो ये है कि साहब कैसी साहबजादों वाली बात करते हो. साहब, यू टॉक लाइक अ टीनेजर. यू थिंक दिल्ली सर्वाइव्स एज इट वाज? From the gate of Mir Khairati to that of Fatehullah Beg, Ali Qasim Jan is in complete darkness. If there are any inhabitants, they are these. Ghulam Hussain Khan's Haveli, which has been turned into a hospital, and in Ziauddin Khan's room lives a doctor, and Kale Sahab's houses have been taken over by a grand Englishman. क्या इस्तेमाल किया है ऊपर? साहिब आलीशान इंग्लिस्तान, a grand Englishman. The Lal Kuan locality is deserted with no trace of men. Localities after localities have been wrecked and ruined. Structures of the city's dwellers have changed, and the situation is such. It has torn down and washed away everything. The tempest that just visited us. तो ये गालिब का खत है. बीच में हम लोग और बातें करेंगे, तब कुछ शायद अगर और सुनाना हो तो मैं सुना दूंगा. I will just read. अभी तक तो हम लोग बात कर रहे थे उर्दू से अंग्रेजी में तर्जुमे की. I have recently translated 2 short poems from English into Urdu. I will just read them for you, the English and my translation. And these are actually almost impromptu translations. Both I did on my way to the High Court in my car. The first poem is by my friend Jonaki Ray. Her poem is called The Poison Flowers for the Semal Flowers That Bloom Every Spring. This is the original. In the beginning, there were 5, each equidistant petal in each flower, like a finger that has soaked in blood and returned flames in return. Outside the window, they flack the sky into red quadrants that reflects the punctuated by headlines voices: life, country, us, them, death, blaring into homes divided by borders. Heedless, the flowers continue to carpet the soil underneath, uncaring whose land or where they belong. Inside each flower, the petals remain equidistant and 5 until the end. अब इसका आप मेरा तर्जुमा सुन लीजिए. It's called the Poison Flowers. ये जो खास तौर पे ये बंद था कि outside the window they flag the sky into red quadrants that reflect, punctuated by headlines voices blaring into homes divided by borders. It was very difficult to translate this. This is my translation. जहर के फूल, सेमल के फूलों के नाम जो हर मौसम बहार में खिलते हैं. शुरू में 5 थीं, हर फूल की हर हम फासला पंखड़ी जैसे खून में डूबी हुई उंगली बदले में शोले लौटा रही हो। खिड़की के बाहर वो आसमान को परचमी अंदाज में 4 बराबर के ऐसे हिस्सों में बांटते हैं जो नुमाइंदगी करते हैं सुर्खियों से कटती हुई आवाजों की। जिंदगी, मुल्क, हम, वो, मौत। सरहदों से बटे हुए घरों में चीखते हुए घुसती हुई आवाजें। बेखबर फूल अपनी मिट्टी पे खुद का फर्श बिछाते चले जाते हैं, इस बात से बेपरवाह कि वो किस जमीन या कहां के हैं। हर फूल के अंदर पंखड़ियां, हम फासला और 5 आखिर तक। This was my translation. And the last poem I want to read is a very short poem by Jeffrey McDaniel. It's called The Quiet World. And I want to read this translation to explain to you कि जो मैं बात पहले कह रहा था कि कई लफ्ज ऐसे होते हैं जिनको वैसे ही छोड़ देना चाहिए जैसे वो ओरिजिनल में थे, उसमें मैंने ऐसा किया है. The original poem is The Quiet World. In an effort to get people to look into each other's eyes more, and also to appease the mutes, the government has decided to allot each person exactly 167 words per day. When the phone rings, I put it to my ear without saying hello. In the restaurant, I point at chicken noodle soup. I am adjusting well to the new way. Late at night, I call my long-distance lover, proudly say, I used only 59 today. I saved the rest for you. When she doesn't respond, I know she's used up all her words. So I slowly whisper, I love you, 32 and a third times. After that, we just sit on the line and listen to each other breathe. Now this is my translation. Quiet world, खामोश दुनिया. इस कोशिश में कि लोग एक दूसरे की निगाहों में निगाहें डाल के देखें और गूंगों को खुश करने के लिए भी हुकूमत ने यह तय किया है कि हर शख्स के लिए एक दिन में 167 अल्फाज की हद मुकर्रर की जाए. जब फोन की घंटी बजती है, मैं उसे अपने कान पे लगा लेता हूं, बगैर हेलो कहे हुए. रेस्टोरेंट में मैं चिकन नूडल सूप की तरफ इशारा कर देता हूं. मैं इस नए निजाम में अपने आप को बखूबी ढाल रहा हूं. देर रात को मैं अपनी दूर बसी हुई महबूबा को फोन करता हूं, फख्र से कहता हूं, आज मैंने सिर्फ 59 इस्तेमाल किए, बाकी तुम्हारे लिए बचा के रखे. जब वो जवाब नहीं देती, मैं समझ जाता हूं कि वो अपने सारे अल्फाज इस्तेमाल कर चुकी है. इसलिए मैं सरगोशियों में धीरे धीरे कहता हूं, आई लव यू 32 और 1/3 बार. और उसके बाद हम दोनों बस लाइन पे बने रहते हैं और एक दूसरे को सांस लेता सुनते हैं. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका. So this is all that I had to say just now. But बाकी अब आप लोग पूछें, अगर कुछ पूछना चाहें, कोई गुफ्तगू होना, कुछ अड्डेबाजी अगर करनी हो तो कुछ बातें करनी हो.
Thank you so much. I wish we didn't have to stop listening to you reciting, but we do have to open up. I have lots and lots of questions, but I'm going to open it up because there are lots of people here and I'm sure they have questions or comments. Anybody who wants to come in, please, this is the time. Any thoughts, questions for Saif, for any of us, anything at all? There are lots of translators in the audience.
या तो उनको कुछ समझ में नहीं आया जो मैंने कहा, या इतना समझ में आया कि कोई सवाल पूछने की गुंजाइश नहीं. Okay, one quick question, Dr. Sabah Bashir. Where do find more challenges to English? Okay, so her question is whether I find more challenges from Urdu to English or English to Urdu.
Also,
the clear answer.
To put on your video and ask the question as well. We can treat this like a meeting as opposed to a.
How do I do that now? As I told you, I'm not very technical.
You are fine. You are fine. I was telling Dr. Sabah Bashir that if she.
अब ये उल्टा हो गया, इसका क्या करना है? Just one second.
You were fine before.
I know. Wait. Okay.
I was telling the others that if they would like to switch on the video and ask, that's also great. Instead of writing on chat, it will be a great way to.
Right.
Yeah.
Is this all right?
Yes.
Now? Yeah.
Okay, so questions are coming in on chat then.
Fine. So I'll answer this first question that Sabah has asked. My clear and simple answer to that is that it is more challenging when I translate from Urdu into English than from English into Urdu.
There's another question about what gives you more satisfaction, which direction?
Oh.
Direction.
I don't think I have a preference in that sense. What gives me more satisfaction? What gives me more satisfaction is when I think I've done a translation that will, जो कि original जो जिसने लिखा है उसकी रूह को तड़पा नहीं देगा. If that much I can achieve, I think I have done a reasonably faithful job, and that gives me a lot of satisfaction. The thought about the Aditya, the thought about the reader bringing their own truth while reading a poem, oh, it's gone. Do you want to? Can I?
Yeah, it says the thought about the reader bringing their own truth while reading a poem is something that really stuck with me, more so because of how you said it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
There's another question about how does a person get introduced to Urdu poetry?
Yes, well, okay, there's another question. Okay, I'll read this second question. How does one get introduced to Urdu poetry? I'm assuming this question is from somebody who doesn't know the Urdu script. And therefore, I think currently, if you really want to get introduced to Urdu poetry, do two things. One, there is an old book, a collection of Urdu poetry, Asan Urdu Shairi, Easy Urdu Poetry, edited by Kuldeep Salil. The translation is not much to talk about, but the great service that it does is that it brings easy Urdu poetry home to those people who are who love the language or who want to to read Urdu poetry but don't know either the script or the language itself. तो उससे अगर आप शुरू करें तो एक आपको broad idea तो हो ही जाएगा. And then the beautiful website called rekhta.org. Go to Rekhta. Click on any, there's a beautiful index, poet-wise, poetry-wise, subject-wise. Click on any share, click on any word, you will get a meaning in English and in Hindi, both. But again, the problem there would be that the context is not given in most cases. So, वही बात है कि अगर आप जिगर पे जाएंगे तो liver लिखा होगा वहाँ पे, तो आप उसका क्या करेंगे? So you have to, read and read, just do that. जॉन एलिया का एक बहुत अच्छा जुमला है कि बहुत सारे लोगों को पढ़ना चाहिए, मगर वो लिख रहे हैं. तो मैं तो अभी तक पढ़ ही रहा हूँ. There's another question which I couldn't read properly. It vanished as I was reading it.
Yeah, I can read out the questions for you.
Please, yes.
So this is from Stuti. Two possibly related questions. Which language do you think in? And also, can dreams be bilingual?
The first answer, the answer to the first question is that when I wear my lawyer's hat, I think only in English and only in English. अगर आप मुझसे कहें कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट में, हाई कोर्ट में जाके उर्दू में बहस कर दो, तो उस वक्त मुझे बिल्कुल ऐसा लगेगा जैसे कि मुझे उर्दू में मैंने कभी नाम भी ना सुना उसका. So when I think professionally, I think only in English. When I'm drafting my petition, arguing in court, giving opinions to clients, only in English. Now this is amazing. Sorry. जी.
पुरानी फिल्मों में तो कोर्ट में उर्दू ही सुनते थे वैसे.
ये एक बिल्कुल अलग बहस है कि कोर्ट में अब अभी भी बहुत सारे अल्फाज ऐसे हैं जो कि सिर्फ उर्दू ही नहीं बल्कि फारसी के हैं जो इस्तेमाल होते हैं अभी भी. But in the higher courts, the language of pleadings is English. And we have been trained that way. But it is amazing that the moment I switch to my house, to domesticity, वो मैं सोचता भी उर्दू में ही हूँ. And I'm not talking about poetry or literature or anything. अगर मुझे यहाँ देखना होगा कि मैं ये टीवी चलाऊं तो मैं अंग्रेजी में नहीं सोच रहा हूँ, should I switch on the TV? No. मैं उसको यही सोच रहा हूँ कि मैं टीवी चलाऊं. And my father, who has written 45 books on law in English, अभी भी अगर मैं उनको फोन पे कोई बात बताऊं और वो उनको लिखना हो तो वो उसको अंग्रेजी में नहीं लिखेंगे, उसको उर्दू में लिखेंगे, चाहे मैं अंग्रेजी में क्यों ना बोल रहा हूं. He'll translate it in his mind and write in Urdu. So that is what I do. Dreams, whether dreams can be bilingual, mine are bilingual, sometimes trilingual also, believe me, and more often than not they are nightmares. Of course dreams can be bilingual because you are yourself bilingual. I don't know of any person who is not bilingual. हम लोग अभी भी जो बात कर रहे हैं, I don't think, at least I cannot for a whole 10 minutes speak in chaste Urdu in a normal conversation. I don't think I can. I'll certainly bring in some of the other English words, some Hindi words, something like that. तो हम लोग bilingual हैं, inherently, intrinsically bilingual हैं हम लोग. तो dreams भी हमारे bilingual होंगे.
Thank you. There's some Priyanka is asking for an example of transcreation.
Priyanka is the one who actually was discussing transcreation with me yesterday, and I've given her enough examples, and I gave two even right now. I just didn't refer to her name. So I just gave an example. जैसे कि दो examples मैं आपको इसमें दे देता हूँ. ठहरिए, फिर मैं अपनी किताब उठा लूँ. एक मिनट.
Are there two Priyankas on the call? That could also be possible.
Priyanka Sarkar.
हाँ.
I assure you it's her. क्योंकि वो अभी मानेंगी नहीं ना इतनी आसानी से. So I'm giving you an example of Mir again. Right? Here. Now, मीर का एक बहुत मशहूर शेर है, उसी गजल में से जो मैंने पहले सुनाई थी कि उल्टी हो गई सब तकदीरें, कुछ ना दवा ने काम किया, देखा इस बीमारी दिल ने, आखिर काम तमाम किया. तो अच्छा, एक तो एग्जांपल मैं पहले दे चुका हूं that if I had used there about that the mountain coming to Muhammad, if I had actually used that idiom, it would have been transcreating. But since I faithfully translated it word to word into Urdu and did that into English, and that made a lot of sense, it was not a transcreation and a translation. But instead of that, had I said, oh, will the mountain come to Muhammad if Muhammad doesn't go to the mountain, I would call it transcreation. अब ये जो शेर है कि यहाँ के सफेदो सियाह में हमको दखल जो है सो इतना है, रात को रो रो सुबह किया और दिन को ज्यों त्यों शाम किया. Now, अगर आप इसका लिटरल तर्जुमा लें तो what it really means is यहाँ के सफेदो सियाह में हमको दखल जो है सो इतना है. In the white and black of this world, my only role is this or this much. क्या कि रात को रो रो सुबह किया और दिन को ज्यों त्यों शाम किया. That I weave the night into morning and somehow pass my day, into evening. But what is he saying? What is Mir saying? Can you write this? Here you obviously have to transcreate it and explain what he's saying. So Mir is actually making a larger and heretic observation, perhaps a heretic observation. He is saying that if there is design to creation, he doesn't know what it is. If there is design to creation, I don't know what it is. I have no role to play in it, much less any power in its affairs. इस तरह से अगर आप उसको करें, मैंने ऐसे नहीं किया है, but इस तरह से अगर आप इसको करें, it would be transcreation and it would make perfect, because this is exactly what he's saying. I hope that clarifies the position for Priyanka. Otherwise, she can fight with me separately.
I think she's got the message.
Yeah.
There is a question from Saurav.
Yes.
It says, Saurav, are you sure you don't want to ask it yourself? I'm encouraging people to switch on their videos and mics and ask their questions, but I can ask it for you if you like. Okay, I'll go ahead. Would you say that it's easier to translate prose into prose simply because of the wider latitude you get in syntax, and because we're spared the rigors of meter and or rhyme in sentences?
100%. It is far easier to, or you say it is far less difficult to translate prose into prose, and which is why I gave an example of Ghalib's letter. That letter took not more than 7 or 8 minutes for me to translate. Had the same length of poetry been given to me, especially Ghalib's poetry, it would have taken me about 2 hours, certainly. And the reason is what you have just said, because the meter and the sound and the length, etc. Certainly easier.
In fact, I had a related question, which can be a follow-up, but how much attention do you pay to rhyme? Because it is something that is an essential part of the ghazal.
A very, very important question. So I've done it both ways. If you see my book that you were just referring to, Beloved Delhi, in that, and I have added a translator's note saying that these are not really translations, but these are explanatory, notes. So here I will give you an example. I will give you an example of this. अब जैसे ये शेर है गालिब का कि हूँ गर्मिये निशात तसव्वुर से नगमा संज, मैं अंदलीबे गुलशने नाफरीदा. I have explained this sher and I then have translated it as the heat of the joy of imagination fuels my songs. I am the nightingale of a garden not yet created. Now there is no meter in my translation. I have not even paid attention to the original meter. But now what I am doing for Majaz with Jerry is that Jerry is actually translating it in rhyme and meter. Not so much meter, certainly taking care of the meter, but translating it in rhyme. And which is why it is taking double the time that it would usually take, to translate. Because then it has to rhyme, there has to be a hadith or a qafiyah or something like that. So, but my take on this is very, very clear. I am not a great fan of translation in rhyme. To me, rhyming is secondary. The essence, the actual meaning, the integrity of the poetic original work is what is primary. And if I can't translate that, if I am inadept, if I am incompetent translating that into rhyme, I will not even attempt to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Thanks. I wanted to ask about Zauq actually, and especially in relation to Ghalib. Now, as far as I know, in the court of Bahadur Shah Zafar, who was himself a poet, his favorite poet or the official poet of his court was Zauq and not Ghalib. In the present day, of course, I guess for a variety of reasons, there's almost universal agreement that Ghalib was the superior poet. So I was wondering if you could comment on what were the differences of style or opinion or preference that would have led to Bahadur Shah Zafar preferring Zauq over Ghalib?
Yes, I've actually spent a number of pages in my book on this question. It is not, I think, so much a question of literature as it is of history, but I will still try and answer this. So there is not a unanimous opinion, but there is no doubt about the fact that Zauq was a far, far inferior poet than Ghalib. In fact, there is no comparison at all. Why he was the poet laureate, why he was the Ustad of Bahadur Shah Zafar, is because there were family terms, and he was before him. His father was close to the Qila, and Zauq himself was the Ustad before Bahadur Shah Zafar, of Bahadur Shah Zafar's father, etc. So it was really his closeness and proximity to the royal family that made him the poet laureate as well as the Ustad of Bahadur Shah Zafar, not his poetic merit. The differences between Ghalib and Zauq are very, very clear. I think the essential difference I will tell you is this, that while there is a lot of thought, a lot of philosophy in Ghalib's poetry, in Zauq's poetry is in comparison to Ghalib has no great thought or philosophy involved. There's no depth in it. It's just about romance and dosti or mohabbat or ishq or jam o mina or bulbul and all these things. He doesn't say anything great. Yes, he had a great mastery over the syntax and how he used colloquialism into his poetry. But even while doing so, कोई ऐसी बहुत बड़ी बात नहीं कहते थे वो. Ghalib, on the other hand, was a great philosopher, 200 years ahead of his time. So that was the essential difference. There are two lineages. Yesterday I had a discussion on Instagram, and I was explaining there that there are two lineages of Urdu poets. Classical Urdu poets. There's one branch of Urdu poets which starts from Mir, then comes to Mirza Ghalib, then comes straight in this century to Allama Dr. Sir Muhammad Iqbal, and then goes to Faiz. This is the branch of Urdu poets where you will find philosophy and thought and depth, etc. The other branch, which is equally important for the beauty that it brings in, is the branch that starts from Zauq and Momin and Daf Dehelvi, and then comes to Jigar Muradabadi and maybe Faraq and Faraz, etc. Unke yahan sirf jo hai wo beauty hai, and that is also equally important. That's the difference.
Very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are some more excellent questions. I hope you have a few minutes, Saif.
I have all the time in the world. The only thing I'm going to do after this is to cook some korma.
Okay, great. Sounds very exciting. Faiza has said, thank you for a fascinating talk. Dr. Saif, my father has just started reading your book and is greatly enjoying it. I look forward to reading it after him. Thank you. I think she's left the call. There's a question from Tavleen. Sir, in that case, if you think separately in different languages in personal and professional lives, what would you consider as your mother tongue? Would you consider your thinking language and your mother tongue as being different or the same thing?
I would consider Urdu as my mother tongue because that is what I think in at home. That is what I think in for myself. In court, I am not thinking of myself. I'm thinking of my client who has either paid me a fee or of a cause for which I'm fighting. But I think for myself, I think in Urdu, and that is therefore my mother tongue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sabha.
There is a question. There's one more question from Stuti, and this is a very, very relevant question for today. Because we are seeing the vilification of Urdu as a language and the erasure of Delhi's Mughal history, how do we engage with this moment where language is mired into a political discourse of othering?
This is a very painful, I think, issue for me at least, and I've been trying very hard to not let my heart break as much as it should, considering what is happening recently. The Department of the University of Punjab has decided to shift the Department of Urdu to the School of Foreign Languages. I mean, imagine what else can there be. Now, I think the worst of the times are the best of the times for artists, for authors, for writers and poets, and also for lovers of language and lovers of poetry. मेरा ये ख्याल है कि एक मैं आपको कथा सुना देता हूँ. मैंने कल भी सुनाया था एक शेर कि गुल से लिपटी हुई तितली को गिराकर देखो, गुल से लिपटी हुई तितली को गिराकर देखो, आंधियों तुमने दरख्तों को गिराया होगा. तो ये जो आंधियां चल रही हैं, ये हो सकता है कि बड़ी बड़ी चीजों को, दरख्तों को तो गिरा दें, लेकिन ये ऐसी नाजुक, ऐसी डेलिकेट चीजों को, which are the quintessence of our culture, of our Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb, of the very, the basis on which our love is predicated, इसको मुझे लगता नहीं है कितनी भी कोशिश कर ली जाए कोई गिरा पाएगा. उसको हटाना बहुत मुश्किल है. हाँ, नफरतें रहेंगी, hatred will continue. I have not seen such hatred ever in India, and I could never imagine. In fact, the city of Delhi, after I'll call it the genocide, after the genocide earlier this year, has completely changed for me. I don't even know how I wrote a book called Beloved Delhi. But I think instead of becoming disheartened, or maybe in addition to becoming disheartened, what one needs to do is कि अपना जो उर्दू का इश्क है वो और ज़्यादा आप इस वक्त दिखाइए, और उर्दू पढ़िए और उर्दू कोट कीजिए. And the more you delve into Urdu, you will realize that Urdu is the symbols of love cannot be obliterated, and Urdu is perhaps one of India's biggest love symbols.
Thank you, sir. There are some more questions. So Shalim asks, in which genre of Western music can your translations of ghazals be sung? And he cannot ask this question on video because he is currently cooking.
Okay, this was a question that I was asked yesterday also in my life. Can we use Urdu poetry in rap? I mean, the answer to that is that Urdu poetry is already being used in rock, etc. And there is no harm in innovation. Use it in rock, use it in rap, use it in whatever you want, as long as you are not compromising either on poetic integrity or on musical integrity. If it is not compromising on the integrity of either of the two arts, and if there is a possibility of, say, Hum Dekhenge or a Habib Jalib Nazm reaching the youngsters, if it is rapped, at the same time reaching the youngster and a possibility of the youngsters taking more interest in it and trying to understand it more, why not? I am all for innovation, but the soul should not be lost.
Thank you. There are some more. Meeta says, thank you for an excellent session. I've been for so many sessions of yours and always come away with much learning and thought.
Thank you very much, Meeta.
One more question from Saurav. He says, I often resort to stopover translations. This means translating Urdu into Bengali and then into English or other European languages. Do you think this is a lazy way to go about it? I do this.
Go on, sorry.
I do this because, like you said, there are fewer cultural coefficients in European languages for things like kinship terms, culinary differences, etc. But I sometimes feel like it's a fragmented exercise. What are your thoughts?
It is not a fragmented exercise at all. It's a very interesting thing to do. I have been planning to translate from Bengali into Urdu, and how would I translate, because I don't know any Bengali. So I would obviously use English translations and Qazi Nazrul Islam, etc. English translations, and then or Tagore, and then translate from that into Urdu, and maybe also take the help of a couple of my Bengali speaking friends and ask them to translate for me, and then I will translate from that into Urdu. Not only is it a very interesting thing to do, but it is also necessary in certain cases. For instance, in my case, it is very, very necessary. And also, makes it very, very interesting because of the reasons that you have just mentioned, the culinary experiences, etc. I think it's a very, very interesting thing to do. And also, actually, I want to add something here. I am very disappointed that we have translations between Urdu and English. We have translations between German and Urdu and French and Russian and all. But why not between two Indian languages? Why not between Urdu and Tamil? Why not between Urdu and Kannada, for instance? Why are we not? We have so many national languages in the constitution that you see the schedule. Why are we not translating between our own national languages? That should be a very interesting thing to do. And if you do that, obviously you will have to take the help of, most of us will have to take the help of English.
Yeah, it's the idea of removing English as the bridge language between Indian languages. And I think this kind of Indian language to Indian language translation was done in the past, but it's just,
yes,
it's very rare to find that now.
Yeah.
Stuti says, thank you for your hopeful tone. It's so important in this time. And our beloved Delhi will heal and hum bhi dekhenge.
Lazim hai.
I like that. Anybody else who wants to say something, ask something, please feel. Otherwise, we can wrap up. It's past 8 now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this is a good note to end on as well. It's a hopeful one. And really, again, Saif, thank you so much for being here, spending your evening with us and reading out such beautiful poetry, such humorous, incidents about your translation experience, transcreation experiences. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. So again, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here and participating in the session. The questions were absolutely excellent. Yes, we will have sessions like this every week. These are called Translation Thursdays, and we are doing them at 7 p.m. Saif spoke about Jerry Pinto. He'll actually be here next week for the session. So I hope you'll all be here to listen to Jerry Pinto talk about translation next week. He's using Zoom for the first time and is very excited.
He doesn't even use phone. Forget about Zoom. I have to, send him an SMS and say, please look at your email. Yeah, so thank you very much, Mohini. It was really, really delightful for me to be here. And thank you for doing this. It's a very, very important job you're doing, and especially in the lockdown. I think this is how you should use such, as I was saying, the worst of the times are the best of the times for us. So thank you very much for using the worst of the times to the best.
Thank you so much. And for everyone else, please follow Mother Tongue Twisters if you want updates on such sessions, or send me your email address. I will send you updates on sessions like this or anything that we're up to. So again, thank you, Saif, and thank you everyone. I hope we'll see you.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.